Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Artwork NSCAD Alumni Talks. While our talks and our NSCAD community have a global reach, our talk today is being hosted in Kjipuktuk in Mi'kmaq on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq Nation. We are honored to gather, to speak, and to make artwork here. My name is Mollie Cronin. I am the host of Artwork. I graduated from NSCAD in 2015 with a BA, and this week's talk is on the topic of storytelling in film, and I'm joined by actually two other 2015 alum, it seems like, my graduating classmates, asinnajaq and Raghed Charabaty. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I'd love if we could start with maybe just like each of you doing a little introduction. Maybe you could just tell us a bit about where you are right now and the kind of themes you've explored in your filmmaking before. So maybe, Raghed, do you want to take it away?
Sure. I actually graduated in 2016, but I count 15 as my year. When I was in NSCAD, I knew that we had very limited budgets to do things. As I've discovered the rest of my life, you're always going to have these limited constraints. And I really wanted to play as much as possible within those constraints. And Sam Fisher, Saul Nagler were so instrumental in like pushing me. And in 2015, I had my NSCAD short get into a bunch of festivals, and like we went around, and that really started my career. And since then, I've just been I've realized the same film over and over, just in different ways. So what I did is I turned that film into a trilogy. A lot of it was sort of set design, art, poetry, narration, compositing, animation. But just recently, I just shot my first feature, and I'm still editing it. And it's quite different. It's more realistic, present. We shot it in Beirut. So there's no narration, there's no animation, there's none of that. But it's the same story. And NSCAD was really a place where I could find my voice and what is the thing that I really needed to let out of me. It's like art is healing, but at the same time it's painful, but at the same time it has to be fun constantly. So I've just been trying to find that fun all the time. And so far I've been working as a filmmaker for the last, I don't know, 7 years, full time, which is not something I expected to be able to do, but it's been great. And I'll tell you later how, but yeah. And asinnajaq has been one of the people who have inspired me to keep doing things and to keep experimenting. And I love her work so much. So
that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Asinnajaq, can you tell us a little bit about where you are now and a bit about your filmmaking practice?
Yeah, absolutely. I have to start by saying that Ray is one of the most imaginative filmmakers that I know. And it's really incredible to see that, that imagination coming to life in film. So I studied film, and now I work making films, and also got surprise jobs as a curator and doing writing, which is something I've always wanted to do. Actually, it was like one of my first things that I ever wanted to do was be a writer. So yeah, writer, making installation arts. I never labeled myself as a photographer, but it was what I was always doing. And now other people are like, you're a photographer. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's true. And then, yeah, I make films. So with films, I think when I started making films, I was really into the experimental films and made a couple of those in classes. And then I found that while it was really rewarding for me, I didn't feel like people could connect with them in a way that was what I wanted, because one of the reasons that I'm really into art in general is about the way we can communicate with each other. So for me, it wasn't satisfying, even though I loved making experimental films and could express myself. It was the connection that I was missing. So I slowly moved in towards more still experimental spirit, but more narrative or something that people could connect with. I think one of the things I really focus on personally is emotions. My favorite artworks, be they books or films or anything, are ones that kind of that I connect with really emotionally and that perhaps challenge me like philosophically and really bring interesting feelings, lessons into my body. And that's what inspires me and what I try to do with storytelling.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Could you tell me a bit about what your time at NSCAD was like? And did you go into there thinking you would be a filmmaker? Clearly, you're wearing lots of artistic hats now, but how did your time at NSCAD influence your current practice?
I think that what I loved about NSCAD was the small classes, which is one of the things I was really like a criteria, I guess, that I had. And getting to learn so many parts of filmmaking from, you had to try producing, do editing, do sound, doing the script writing, and getting to be around the camera, like doing all of those positions really gives me a full idea of what it means to make a film. It gives me the possibility to be empathetic for the people that I'm working with, to know the challenges of the different positions, and also to know, like, have a feeling of when something can be pushed further. So that gives me a lot of comfort when I'm working with people on films. So that was one of the number one things. And then the other thing was just like my specific class. We were really supportive of each other, and I got so many amazing film recommendations that like there was my classes that were education, and then there was like watching so many films that was like my side education.
No, that all sounds amazing. And we're going to talk later about film recommendations. So I'm excited to hear if you have any to share with us later on. But Raghed, is there anything else you want to add about your time at NSCAD? Did you have a similar experience kind of doing that broader film education, like learning different parts of working in film?
Absolutely. I mean, I came to NSCAD as an international student, and I came in with a lot of expectation of what North America was and what it could provide me, completely not realizing what Halifax was. Like, it's not Hollywood, it's Halifax. But then I fell in love with it, and it really opened up so much room for me to play. And I'm learning now that play is probably the most important part of making art, is to like let yourself feel what you want to do. And Saul really, really encouraged that with me. Sam was amazing in terms of like teaching the structure and all of that. I mean, the faculty was so exciting to work with. My classmates were really, really fun, but I'm also one of the most stubborn people I know. And when I decide that I want to do something, I'm going to do it regardless. I worked with Nathan for a while in the film department. I don't know how I kept that job because I would go in the studio and like film my own things, and then I have to like go back to work and clean cameras and do whatever. But I learned a lot from Nathan in terms of like camera and gear, and what that helped me, and from Sam DeCoste, who's probably also on the call. We worked together in animation. I learned a lot of different things, which helped me make my own films in the way that I wanted to do it, but with teams, like with classmates. But I would animate, I'd film myself. And then there's all this collaboration with like students years above me and below me, with asinnajaq, with you, with different people. It was just so welcoming to play, the small class sizes, all of that. I did my master's at York, which was really, really amazing. And I TA'd undergrad students at York. It was quite different. It was quite orderly, like there's a lot of ABCs and big classes. was very interesting, definitely a very different world. So I'm very glad that I did art school, where I got to paint and like do music and do all of these fun, playful things. And even though I don't do all of them anymore, I did learn what is the thing in me that's excited when I do it. Because if it, there's the song that was on TikTok. It's an older song. I don't know. It goes, "Are you having any fun? Na 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 na." But really, if you're not having fun, what are you doing? So I'm learning to have fun, and NSCAD was a place to have fun. So that's been it.
Yeah, I also wanted to add that because once we realized that we could just take out the cameras, even if we didn't have a project assignment, like we did so many side and extra and just camera tests. And that was like because we liked hanging out together, and and it was okay if like my friend called me at 1 a.m. and said, I have an idea.
I love that. I think I really get like the sense of play in both of your films. I'd love to talk a bit more about, you were talking, Raghed, about these sort of like different techniques you learned at NSCAD about like employing like these different visuals. And you both, I think, have a really broad range in your films in terms of like the images you're bringing in. You're using found footage or archival footage. You're using there's actors, there's animations, there's more kind of abstract imagery. So I'd love to hear from both of you about how you create and or collect these different images and why you use them the way you do.
I think a key trait that I picked up or that I cultivated at NSCAD was delusion. I'm highly delusional. There's so like recently I've been applying to a lot of labs and different things and things to do, and I was talking to my friend who's yes my friend is more advanced than me in terms of like writing for TV and all of that, and I'm like getting into TV writing and that, and we were talking and I was saying, she's saying, when I see that an application says that it's like highly competitive and only 10 people get in, she's like, I get a little scared. And I'm like, girl, I always assume I am one of those 10 people. Like, this is how I function. So at NSCAD, I remember in third year, so it wasn't thesis, it was in Sam's class. We were pitching and I was the first to pitch. I knew I was gonna get it. Like, I was just really like, I just wanted to get things done. Because I love color. I love doing things. And it's like, why not? Like, what's the point of doing art school if you're just gonna sit in the background and blend in? I mean, the whole point is to like, no surprise that I do drag now, but that was, what was the question? Where were we?
I was asking about how you collect and create these
Yes.
kinds of images, right?
Yes.
Animation and acting and
exactly.
yeah, what is about that kind of collage
I remember now.
Imagery that you like so much?
So in that class we had a very, very small budget to make the film that we wanted to make, and I wanted to make a film that touched on like the civil war in Lebanon, which started when I was like just before I was born, and all of that stuff. And so there's like explosions and like these like crazy chaotic things that I wanted to have in the film, but I knew I couldn't, and I knew I had a tiny budget that all had to go to like food and set. So the only way I could do it was to get creative, working with Sam DeCoste, working with asinnajaq, different people on different projects. I learned how to do miniatures and miniature things. And so I'd book the studio upstairs and I'd like get these aquariums and fill them with water and just dump things into them and light them in different ways. And that's how I started bringing in different things into it. And then I'm like, okay, so now I have this footage. What the fuck do I do with it? I don't know. I need to teach myself After Effects. And so I would teach myself after. So slowly I started to learn all these things, and I made exactly what I had in mind. And people liked it. I liked it. And like, as Asinnajaq, you were saying about experimental work, it's like, you need people to connect. So it was about towing that line between experimenting in form, but also keeping the story digestible to someone outside of yourself. So that was my third year project, which wasn't even thesis, and the profs were super excited about it after a lot of convincing. Well, not Saul was there, but Sam needed a little convincing. And then it got into FNC and TIFF, and it won, and it funded my next film, and that funded my next film, and it just kept funding and funding. And I just kept doing the same thing, but a little bit more technically sound the next time. And that's how I got here. 7 years later, I'm still making the same film, just on a bigger scale. So, and then we did hang out with film vendors at FNC, yes.
Well, I've loved all the past iterations of this film and its various manifestations. So I'm excited to see how it blossoms into this larger project. Asinnajaq, I'd love to talk to you about also how you use this combination of imagery in your film 3000. It's kind of like a combo of some archival footage and then some animation. And can you talk about the process of creating and or accumulating those images and why you paired them the way you did?
Definitely. I went through the archives with a specific story in mind, and tried to just like pick out the pieces that I wanted from the archive. And I learned that it wasn't the way I wanted to have a relationship with it, and that viewing the archive not as something to pick from, but as the subject itself, I had to pay attention to it differently. So I went through the archive again, and I also like made lots of notes, like, oh, I took a lot of images of people. I also need to have images of the land and the animals, and there's so many different things. So it's of course part what I want to see, because that's always going to be a part of it. But then it became a lot about listening and paying attention to what was actually in the archive. So it's a balance of being honest about history without making it too heavy, because I think that it's important to like talk about, for example, colonization, but I don't want to make it the focus. I want like us to be the focus. So there are like the white people in it. There's like the guy giving the ration of bread and stuff like that, but it's not all about them. They're not the focus. We're the stars. Thank you. And really, when it comes to the images and how they go together, it's all about their feeling and how they play off of each other. So, for example, there's one shot, if you watch it, there's one shot of a beluga, and it just kind of like goes like this, which is the most expensive shot in the whole film. And I learned that because like by accident, it was like from this other archive and it costed more money. And so we were like, let's see if we can use something else. And I tried so many other images of whales, and it's like all of those images that are in it, they have a specific motion, they play into each other, and they're not replaceable the way that we made it. Like maybe if we made it a different way, it's possible, but none of those images can just be plopped in or out. So they all have an energy that feed into each other, and that's editing. And they go into each other because of their emotion, because of the way they're pushing the story together, all of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, what I love about both your films is that these various elements you both use, they feel so natural together. Like you really capture the energy of these different elements, and they flow very well together. You both talk about home in different ways, and whether it's using kind of like found footage representations of like you do in your work as Asinnajaq, or whether it's talking about the war in Lebanon, Raghed. So I'd love if you could talk a bit more about what stories you want to be telling about these places, and if they are different than the stories we kind of typically expect or have seen in the past of your homes. Maybe Raghed, do you want to start us off there?
Sure. It's it's a journey in terms of Lebanon has quite a story, and I wasn't born in the war. I was born right after it. But my whole life is informed by it. Everyone's life in Lebanon isn't quite informed by it, and it's still ongoing, but without the military weaponry sort of thing. But it's also a place filled with love and people and delicious food and beautiful things. And how do I know what part of it I cherish the most when I'm here in Canada alone with no one around me? And my go-to was to like go right into the things that are heavy. So I did that for a few films actually. And there's a bit of politics in those films especially, and it was an important phase that I needed to go through to digest it and let it out. And now that that's done, I'm able to move on to a different place of love and romance and connection. And so my current work is quite different from my work before, but it's still about home. I mean, the film that I just shot, it's a love story. It's set in Beirut and in Toronto. And it's all about desperation and delusion and romance. But it's not defeatist in any way. It happens around the Beirut explosion, and I was there and I almost died, and it was quite horrible. But the film is 100% about an unbeatable drive to just keep having fun all the time. So my relationship with telling home stories changes as I learn what is home to me, because also home is also here. A fun thing is there's a lot of talk about Bill C-11 and like these different things about like making CanCon. And when it first came out and it was like, okay, we're gonna pass bills to make sure we make more Canadian content, I was like, oh my God, like, will that affect me negative? Like, what is Canadian content? Because I'll never be able to tell like my Canadian stories are pretty Lebanese, and I'm Canadian, like I'm citizenshiply Canadian. And an actual Canadian story would be Indigenous. So a lot of like figuring out what things mean, what home is. And in my work, I am figuring this out constantly. It's just the approach is always, if the approach is artificial and aesthetic, it shows. So the approach needs to be genuine and something that's more of a second thought rather than the primary intention for me. Because if I try to make it so much about home, and I did make a film like that, it fizzles and it becomes kind of cheap for me in terms of like my practice. So that's where I'm going now.
That's fascinating. I can't wait to see more. Asinnajaq, what about you? How does the idea of home come into your work, and are you considering ways that your home has been represented in the past, and is this film creating a different dialogue around that place?
I think that in a way it's like with somewhere so iconic, it's hard to not have to confront the way that people perceive it. And it's like honestly kind of unfortunate that you always have to acknowledge that and play into it. So in 3000, it starts with snow and the cold and the wind, because it's like give people what they're expecting and then you can do whatever you want. So I think there's some kind of feeling of that in all of my work, though. It's about how okay, so literally all of my work as a curator, as an artist, as a filmmaker, like last year I had an exhibition that I curated that was called With the Seasons. That's just about like, we have snowy season, we have summer season, like we go swimming, it's 30 degrees, like it's, I think it's always like you just have to spell it out. And then for us, it's like we get to celebrate in the exhibition like the seasons that we have and the change of activities. There's a photographer who made a series of photos of hunting throughout the season. So you see like gathering mussels and hunting a seal, and they're like seasonal activities. And so for us, it's like we can celebrate it that way. And then for the viewers coming from outside, it's like literally, I just want to say, like, the snow was beautiful, yes, and amazing. And then also, and more. And then, yeah, that was an important thing in 3000 to make sure that there's all seasons. We really paid attention to it. Make sure that you see the different seasons happening. And as a like artist with installation work, what I do is take pictures of our land and make them really big and show you how many colors and how much flowers, because they're beautiful and amazing. And our land, like, we wouldn't be alive if it wasn't possible to live in, if it didn't deliver everything that it needed to for us to survive for thousands of years. That's like one of the things that kind of blows my mind about people who aren't us and try to say it's empty or whatever. It's like, but then I wouldn't be alive. No one would live there if it wasn't possible. But just to move on from there, I think that my films and work is really primarily, it touches on those things and they're there, but it's about feelings first and foremost.
I just want to say, sorry, Molly, 3000 is one of the most beautiful and life-changing films I've ever seen. I love it so much. I got to see it on the big screen. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it. And I saw asinnajaq's piece at the AGO last week, just beautiful. And I saw a film that's not out yet, but that I just love so much, and I can't wait for it to be out. Asinnajaq has such a special way of feeling that is like really difficult for, it's probably easier for an artist to get to, but very difficult for a filmmaker to get to when you want to be cerebral about things, but you're able to connect and like feel things with your senses, and then help me feel it with you and breathe with you. Your films breathe, and your art at the age, it's just so unique and special that I'm just so not surprised, and I'm just so excited for your new project and for your art shows as well as your film work. Yeah.
Thanks. So wanted a little bit more intel about the project. I made a like short film that's about, what's that face? I'm telling you about the project. Okay. So I wrote a poem in 2019 and been looking for a way to share it for a while. And then Pop Montreal had money for our art project and asked me if there was anything I wanted support for. And so I was finally like, yes, I'm gonna make this film. So I made a film that's based on a poem that's about feelings. And basically for the film, I was just like, I just want to show the feelings. So, okay, you have synesthesia, and I think I have mildly, because sometimes when I listen to music, it's like, oh, I will watch a music video and I will be like, it's all wrong. It should have been red, the colors, and it should have done that. And then I was slowly like, okay, I maybe don't see it like immediately all the time, but somehow I have like, this is how it should have been. So basically I applied all of that, like, okay, this is how this feeling feels visually, because that's like a truth for me. And so basically that's what it's, I used the overhead projector and filmed really close up in it with things moving around, like chia seeds and jello and ice, and used them to create these feelings. I showed it to one class and 2 audiences so far, and people really think that it's like biological stuff, but it's not. It's just me and my friends in a garage playing with like olive oil and stuff like that.
So good. Like I try so hard to get my miniatures to look like something, and then you're just like, I got this. Chia seeds it is.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
When will we be able to see it? Do you know, asinnajaq?
Well, I'm not sure yet because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I decided that I have to do one more polish up, which means that I need more money to do the sound correct and everything. So it's slightly on pause right now, but when it's really done, so I'll send it to you.
Oh, I can't wait. Raghed, can you tell us a bit about the project you're working on now? We've kind of like danced around it a little bit, that it's a kind of buildup of past projects, but can you give us a little more information?
Sure. I can tell you how I got to make it because maybe it'll help someone listening in. I wanted to make a feature because I felt like I was ready to tell a longer story. And I had no idea how, and I don't have the credits to qualify for real telefilm, and I don't have a producer who has those credits yet. I've been living just as a filmmaker on my own, making my own little projects through the art councils, different councils. And I thought, okay, now's the time for the Telefilm Talent to Watch program. And I put everything together. I got my what do you call it, emerging producer on board. We had such a good team. We prepared everything. I wrote a full script. It went through so many different stages. It got me into a writer's lab. It's like I felt really, really, really strongly about it. And we put in our application and we didn't get it. And I put the application through NSCAD and I didn't get it. And I was pretty upset that not upset, but like, I was like, oh, because when you feel like you really are going to get something and you don't, that's the disappointment really. It's the delusion is what it is.
It hurts even more. You're like, it was in my hands, and then you told me it wasn't in my hands. That's why I can't. There's some like awards or whatever. Someone tried to nominate me, and I'm like, no, because if I lose, I will be on the floor for a month.
Exactly. So I got funding for a short from the Canada Council, and it was supposed to be the calling card for the feature, but I was going to make it while I'd already applied for the feature, so it was going to be its own thing anyways. It's a variation. So it's a love story around the Beirut explosion, but instead of the characters going to the moon, they become these like alien, like queer creatures thing. So we went to Lebanon with my DP, a lot of NSCAD connections actually on that set. We went to Lebanon, we shot there, and while we were shooting, on the second to last day, we got the no from Telefilm. And I was like, you know what? I don't care. I just want to have fun. So we shot for 7 days and we did like 2 takes most. I was acting in it with someone else who was really, really good. And we just kept shooting and shooting and shooting, just having fun. And I spoke with my DP and he was like, I think you have a feature. And I was like, I think so. And I just finished editing it like 7 months later. And it's so much more than I could have expected. And it's probably the much better version of the scripted thing that I was going to do with Telefilm anyway. So things kind of fell into place for this project. It was improvised. It was like guerrilla style. We're getting our permits for everything. So we need to clear rights, apparently is a thing. So make sure you clear your rights when you're shooting. But that's the story. And it's very similar to my very, very first film, Alia from NSCAD. Just told in like an hour and some, and without any miniatures, just like there. So I'll share it when it's ready with you. So
Is that where you are right now? Are you on set on this project?
no, I'm doing this gig for some coin, but we're actually doing music videos with a really, really good friend.
Cool.
But I'm in the middle of coloring the feature right now.
Yeah, that's like so exciting. I can't wait to see. Actually, that kind of like transitions as well into one of the questions I had for both of you. A little bit about like the money making side of working in film. And you've kind of, Raghed, you talked a bit about like how this particular film got made and the kind of process of that. But in general, how do you both sort of generate income to continue your practice as filmmakers?
Well, personally, I work in so many fields, so it kind of works out. But it is a hard thing because on my first film, I got to dedicate all of my time to it because I was living with my parents. Like, I wasn't too fancy then. Now I'm like too fancy for myself to handle. But then like I could do it. Now it's really good that I do so many things, but what suffers is like that the amount of time I was able to give to the project, and the dedication and the like always thinking about it is a really good way for me to work, and really makes it be able to be really enriched. And so now with my mind kind of like working on so many projects, um, I still think that I'm making good work, but I think that the work feels different when you can dedicate yourself really to it. So that's one of the things that I'm still learning to navigate. I'm really learning to, I'm like still for the past probably 6 months, I've been really, really working on managing my calendar, understanding how many things I can do in a day, making dedicated time for different projects. This summer, I got funding to make ASMR with my friend in Satni. So I just booked my flights. I'm gonna go make ASMR. I'm so excited. But I think, yeah, I just to answer your question, it's kind of like squishing these opportunities, taking them, working in different fields. But I do get grants, apply for grants, and look for opportunities and see what can fit into my ideas. Generally, I have like ideas lined up, and then I wait to see when it fits into an opportunity. Or else, if there's something I really want to do, then I apply to do it. I don't know if I could be a teacher. I worked at a desk at a gallery for a while, and having to show up anywhere is basically it's going to be a no for me.
Yeah, general kind of artist struggles, right? Like, if only I could dedicate all of my time to this project that's in my brain, but it's always like figuring out all of these methods of funding it, which is such a tricky thing sometimes. Reed, how about you?
Luckily for
Oh,
me,
sorry, go
I
ahead.
don't know about it's okay. I don't know about other people, but I have like specific funding also like exactly for super niche who I am, which is funding for like Nunavik Inuit. So it's also like there are some funding opportunities for really niche things. However you define yourself, I recommend seeing if there's something that really is funding exactly for you, because it just means that it's people who will likely understand your vision and also have support for you. And like specifically for me, I'm really lucky because that funding, not enough people apply for it. So it's just that there's so many different ways to do things, and you never know. There might be something made specifically for you.
Yeah, definitely that. There's so many residencies as well for like BIPOC people and filmmakers and artists and newcomers. So I've done a bunch of them, and they've been really helpful. Some of them are paid, some of them have stipends, some of them are great on a CV to get another gig afterwards. After NSCAD, I moved to Toronto immediately. And I thought that I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do, but I knew I had to like survive. So I got a desk job for 2 years in communications. Did I get fired? Okay, so And I was like, what should I do now? So I did my master's program immediately. After 2 years after NSCAD, I did my master's at York. It was fully paid. I got to TA, so I got extra money there, and I got some shirt grants to make my thesis project. And it just kept going from there. I never went back to a 9 to 5. Although many times I felt like I needed some more stability in my life, but I managed to just go from gig to gig. So the smart thing that I did at NSCAD was learn how to do sound design from the one sound class that we had, which was amazing. So I learned to do sound design. So Lucas,
Yeah, Lucas.
amazing prof. So I learned to do sound design, sound mix, animation, compositing, coloring, editing, filming. So I also did some cinematography. I got my own camera, my lenses, my gimbal, which is how I'm working today, for example. And so I just started getting all these different gigs and different things.
Yeah, Lucas. Sorry.
But yeah, and then so that's how I would make the extra money to just make ends meet when it's a little tough. But mainly it's also through grants. So there's the different councils. There's Toronto, Ontario, and Canada Council. Every province has its own. So I've just been living through those grants and the gigs, balancing them out. I went to Lebanon for a couple of years, so I was able to live quite cheap. Fortunately for me, unfortunately for the local Lebanese people. But there's always a way to make things happen if you're driven and stubborn enough. And when I got good enough technically as a writer and as a director, I started applying to different residencies. And I started getting in slowly here and there and here and there. So I did the Netflix Banff residency, which was fully paid. And I got to meet people there who then would like interview me and hire me for different gigs. It's a very network heavy lifestyle. And it's very tricky if you don't get your grant and you're like, fuck, I need to like work something part-time or full-time just to like survive until the next project. But I have been doing my own projects the way I want, not as much as I want and not with the money that I want, but learning how to do them within the obstructions of money and like the constraints. And it's going well so far. And eventually I want to join the union, the writers union and the directors union, and like go into TV where it's more stable and more collaborative. But the journey to get there is not easy, but it's not as impossible as I would have imagined 10 years ago. And it's been rewarding. I'm happy with where I am.
I have advice also about TV because it's kind of like someone's going to ask you eventually, or you're going to go there because it's where the money is, really, honestly. And it's very nice when the check clears. But like I made 2 TV episodes of documentary TV, and one of them is going to come out this fall. And that one was amazing. That was my second one. I loved it. It's on a show called Amplified. That's about Indigenous musicians making a song and sharing their inspiration. But the first one I ever worked on was like a sports thing, and the crew that I got sent with, like, it was a misogynistic person with me, and as a director, like, made me feel so uncomfortable and like inappropriate things. And so it's just, I think, like, for me, that my advice is, if you're going into TV, like, I ask who's on my crew and make sure that there's good communication, and that if I'm like traveling with people that I don't know, that I can make sure I can communicate what's going on and set strong boundaries, and like not work with people that are misogynistic, because there's just like a change that's happening, and there's like old guard and new people coming in, and they think that behavior was okay, but it isn't. Anyways, that's just like that sucked for me, and I don't want other people to go through that.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry that happened to you. That blows. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Well, not a very graceful transition. I'm sorry. I'd love we could open up to it's my fault as a host to be like, and next. But I'd love, I know that we're running out of time, so I'd love if we could open it up to questions from our audience and participants. I think Saul is very eager to chat with both of you. So Saul, why don't you take it away?
I've been waiting for this moment. Oh my gosh, two my absolute favorites. So are everyone other students that are here. But a couple things. I just want to congratulate both of you. You know, we are very, very excited for how amazing and all your achievements and the work you've created, you know, far past your years at NSCAD has been phenomenal. And yeah, it's just been such a pleasure to watch your careers. And frankly, you know, I'm learning a lot from both of you. You know, I think there was an article, asinnajaq, that you wrote in was it Canadian Art that you curated this thing? And you know what? It was actually, you know, I make my students read that article, and you were talking about. I do, and I actually printed out. And I'm like, okay, so here's an experience about NSCAD and a sort of way of making films that, you know, unfortunately, we're kind of tied to a very Western idea of hierarchical filmmaking. And I said, well, you know, if you really want to talk seriously about, you know, hierarchy and patriarchy and colonization, understand that like this way we're learning filmmaking is also in itself can be a very, you know, I would say kind of lack collaboration. Also, it's a very Western idea of understanding storytelling and power dynamics. And I think that you articulated so beautifully in your article. And I want to thank you for that. And I do make my film 3 and 4s read that. And I'm learning a lot from you from that. But I have a question actually, aside from just saying how great you both are, which you don't need to have me say, but what you guys both are talking about, you both have like such familial connections to your practices. Number one, you know, Ray, you collaborated with your mom for writing some of your very early, like you're right, like she's a poet, right? Or she's psychoanalyst poet, I think both, right? And I think weren't they in your films at one point? Or yeah, so the box that you built in the studio, which funny you did not bring that up about making all your classmates chisel the box. And all the torture that you put us through building that thing up in the studio, but you got to have, you know, coffee with the and that big award, so whatever. But you know, and also of course, you know, asinnajaq, your filmmaking is it's in your blood, and it's funny because when I told Daryl Varga who your dad was, he was like, "What? What is he doing here?" And like Daryl was kind of shocked that you were at NSCAD actually, because like, you know, obviously your father's filmmaking is so well known. And so if that's okay, can I just ask a question around, you know, of course we're your NSCAD family, but we're very minor in this sort of world, but you both have it in your blood. I mean, your art practice. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
I think for me, my dad just gave me a really amazing space to do looking together. And he always made sure I had a camera, and we used to go like drive somewhere with more nature and just look and take pictures and videos and then show it to each other. And my favorite thing about the memories is of course spending time together, but also remembering like my dad just set up for me to have time to look and to capture, and never told me how to do it. And that's something I really appreciate about him, so that I can develop my own skills. And I think like he's just really supportive, but like lets me really do my own thing. So mostly what my dad does is give me a lot of inspiration and like not cause a scene when he looks at my film and probably could realize like, oh, I said this one little thing one time and then she made a whole film. Because that's totally how it happens. But and I also got to learn a lot because I like assisted him making films before I even went to school, and learned a lot just from being able to be in the editing room and see him work with the editor, and really stuff that I was lucky to get to do.
Yeah.
And then I stole his producer. So that also.
Yeah. For me, none of my family are artists, but we're a very touchy-feely family. Like, we have to say "I love you" all the time, and if like we don't verbalize our emotions, then something's disastrously wrong. So kind of making films together in those early stages in my work was so natural. It was like the way we expressed our emotions to each other, is we just collaborated and made things together. And I think on my mom's side, and my grandpa, who I don't know, who was apparently like had a cinema in his house and all of that, and it was all destroyed in the war. I think they really wanted to be involved in things in their childhood, but their childhood was basically like carrying guns and running around and like whatever, like war childhood. So I think they just like gave me all the freedom to just go out and do things. And naturally we would just do them together because I didn't want to feel alone. And it was a really sweet, meaningful way to stay connected. We don't do that anymore. My work has changed quite a bit, but the essence, like the feeling of expressing love, is still there in every single thing that I do. And like, despite the years and all the things that have changed, I'm always gonna love them so much, and they know that, and they can see that through the work. And it's like everything we do is gonna outlast us, and it's all my NSCAD films have been family portraits basically, but now they're more like family portraits in my heart. No, my mom's not a poet, but she does write her own poetry in Arabic, and my dad writes his poetry. When we were kids, they would write us poems as gifts.
So aren't they poets? Maybe just not published. But
Yeah,
they're
like,
poets.
yeah, you're 100%. They never made a dime off of it.
They did it for the love.
100%. And that doesn't count.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
only art if it's capitalist.
Thank you. Someone had to say it.
And
But you've really changed my life in the most beautiful way. And I'm just really happy that I chose NSCAD out of all the other places that I could have gone. And I remember I had a prof in Lebanon. She was American. And she was like, yeah, I've traveled through Canada, and like Halifax is so small. You're not gonna like it. Please don't choose it. And I was like, well, I did. So I'm very happy that I did.
Do you guys have any films other than your own beautiful work, which I have linked in the chat if everyone scrolls up? Do you have any films that you recommend we check out just for our viewing pleasures? Things that you loved?
Okay, one film that I think about all the time, pretty often, is Playtime from Raghed Charabaty.
Before our talk started, Asinnajaq recommended an Australian brunch place in Kingston to me. So now my notes are just Australian brunch, Raghed Charabaty, which works for me. That sounds great. Ray, what about you? Any films that you really love that you think we should look at?
Yes, I love Roma. I love Cold War. I love all the Tarkovskys. I remember at NSCAD, I was like, I'm never gonna watch Tarkovsky. It's too mainstream. And then I realized how stupid. And actually, every film that Saul screened in fourth year was just so good, and they've all stayed with me. And I don't think I would have watched them on my own because I wouldn't have even found them. But there was, so I'm gonna be stupid here. What's the film with the French director on a bridge? There's fireworks. They fall in love. Sorry.
oh, that's yeah, that's the same person that did Holy Motors. Leo Carax.
Yes,
Yeah,
amazing.
that's very much your, and his newer work is very much your style. Anyways,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's influenced my work so much.
Yeah, very, very, very well. I mean, yeah, I mean, sometimes these films were pretty I mean, I think were any of you in my 8:30 in the morning class that I had to teach once, and that was kind of I would go out of my way to kind of show the most difficult work. But yeah, anyways, yeah, that's some good
Lovers
stuff.
on the Bridge.
Lovers on the Bridge.
That's the
That's
one.
very, yeah, excellent, excellent film.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. It's been so charming and lovely to talk to you both. For anyone curious to see more from Asinnajaq and Raghed, we've got links in the chat to both of their websites and to their films. Thank you again. We're going to announce later on in the next couple of weeks what our spring and summer artwork talks are going to be. But this will be available online later for people to view the recording of. So thank you both again. It was such a treat to get to chat with you.
Thank you, Molly. It's so good to see you, and I love
Yeah,
your
you-
art, and I love
thank you.
following all
Likewise.
your things.
Thanks, Ray.
Hope to see you soon.
Likewise.
And thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.